Greetings, my friends. Welcome to the Let's Get Gritty podcast with yours truly, Dr. India White. I hope you guys are doing well today. Go Gators. We had a wonderful win in basketball, national championship. Well done to the orange and blue. They were very gritty, and it was a great opportunity to see that and to see that they made history with their third win. It's definitely great to be a Florida Gator. So, with that said, I'm now going to go into some announcements. First things first, the Let's Get Gritty podcast with Dr. India White will be featured on Spotify and all of the main social media outlets. Speaking of those outlets, you've got Facebook for following me is Miss India White. LinkedIn is the India White. Twitter is Indie Speak and Teach. Instagram is Indie238. YouTube is India White 123, and TikTok is Dr. India White. So I'm looking forward to following you guys and having follow-up conversations and seeing you guys out in the field. Check out the website www.india-white.com for some blogs or books, or to schedule me for any speaking or coaching events that you have coming up. I'm grateful for the different STEM conferences and stuff I had in March. Thank you to Vermont for the wonderful time I had with you guys. I'm looking forward to doing my best to make the Minnesota conference, also FCTM, the joint conference, also the CAMPS conference, NCSM, and NCTM conferences. Thank you to everyone involved with that process and all those different processes from the bottom of my heart. And thank you for the selection. I also wanted to remind you guys of the Grit Mini Workshop. Check that out when you get a chance on Grassroots Workshops website. Also, the Grit Academy is doing online tutoring. So get with me whenever you get a chance nationwide. Don't forget your Grit calendars. Let me see. My calendar's here. I use my calendar faithfully. Don't forget your Grit calendar. Check it out when you get a chance. Take Grit with you. Let's make some things happen. And with that said, I now want to just talk a little bit more about grit and, how can we win with grit for your success? I thought of this because I was such a proud Gator, knowing what our team was able to accomplish. We are very grateful. It's just something about, I think it's something about the culture, at the university and the athletes, and of course the coaches. And so well done to them. And so with that said, I want to now go and talk about winning with grit for your success, whether you're an educator or you're just someone listening that, supports this work of grit. And I love grit because it's like it holds everything together. Grit is not trying to replace anything. Grit is not trying to knock anything over, or it's not trying to be like the next new fad. Grit is inevitable in all of our lives. It's needed. It is essential. It is just something that it's a trait that will never go away. And whatever your profession, you'll find that you're going to have to pick up grit. It is what it is. And grit supports everything else that you've got going on. It's a glue. It's a cement that holds everything together. Without grit, things just don't get done. So with that said, what are some tips for winning with grit? First things first, keep your mind focused on your goals. Now, this is imperative because life happens and so much can, get us tossed here and there, everywhere. If you do not have your mind focused on your goals, you can lose sight, you can lose deadlines, and you just might not taste of that victory that you're really hoping for. The Gators, they kept their mind on their goal and they won. Sorry, excuse me. I'm not trying to, I'm just loving my team right now. Also, number 2, refusing to give up, refusing to settle for less than what you did. I was working out today and, I had a certain number in my mind. And I try to usually work out consistently, whether it's 30 minutes or an hour a day, whatever. But I had a number in my mind as I'm going to work out for this long. And I actually surpassed that number probably by I want to say about by like 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes, which is nice. So my grit kicked in. But at the end of the day, I had to keep my mind on that, like I will work out for this much time today. And I know that's such a simple, silly example, but when you are, trying to accomplish a goal, especially in education, you're trying to help students meet gains, then you have to have your mind set on what is my system, my formula, what is my go-to, what is my goal, so that I know what I'm doing here. I'm not just spinning my wheels. I'll give it, I'll go off a little bit. When we were, trying to turn the school around and we were really trying to get the results, we really had to put our minds together and have a goal. How many students are we trying to see have proficient? Of course, 100, but realistically speaking, how many students do we feel we actually can help become proficient? And we had that number calculated, and then we came up with the formula. Then we said, okay, well, what is it going to take for them to be proficient? Okay, let's look at the assessments and let's look and see, how many points are needed for students to pass. And what strategies do we have to help our students to actually pass? We had to have those conversations. We had to make it a reality, tangible, and we were obsessed with that. We were on that, like a ant hill, I don't know, like a bunch of ants getting it done. It felt very like we were those ants just doing it, and we got the results. We exceeded our expectations. But we kept our mind on that goal. And that's what we all have to do, especially as you're finishing up the school year, finishing up school, finishing up whatever it is that you're doing. You've got to keep your mind on that goal. 2, refuse to give up. So, I already talked about this, with refusing to give up, refusing to settle, refusing. And we even did that at the school. We refused to give up. There were so many times that, we stayed late and we came in early. I remember sometimes towards the end, we had to factor in Saturday school and Saturday hours because there was a goal. We had to get the job done, and we refused to give up till we got it done. 3, have a positive mindset. So I think it's easier possibly for people to wake up with a negative mindset, to wake up already complaining, finding something wrong, whether it's you woke up on the wrong side of the bed, it's too cold, it's too hot. I don't know. There's so many different things there, right? So choosing to have a positive mindset, sometimes it takes work. Sometimes you have to step back and just smell the roses. Look at your situation and be grateful. Find 10 reasons to be grateful. You're complaining about a job. Hey, at least you have that job. Somebody might have wanted your job and couldn't get it. Complaining about the students that you're teaching. Hey, at least you have those students. It could be a situation where you're teaching students that, were just, I don't know, maybe in a worse situation, or maybe you could have gone through something super traumatic. I don't know. All I'm saying is we have to learn, especially in this education space, to be grateful. Learning to have a positive mindset. Learning to speak positive affirmations. Speaking positively is so key. I've learned that you can speak and see some things manifest. So you've got to be careful on what it is that you're manifesting, what you're creating, what you're speaking, what you're believing. Have a positive mindset. Choose to wake up wanting to win, not only wanting to win, being determined enough to win, right? 4, celebrate. So celebrate the progress being made. Celebrate the good times that you're having every day. And celebrate the fact that you're literally on the road for meeting your goal. Celebrate anyone that has bounced back, any progress that has been made. Celebrate that. Okay. 4 or 5, hold yourself accountable. So this can be through others, through accountability partner, or through yourself. Setting goals with yourself and saying, no, you're going to get this done. You're not in a slacker. You've got to do it. There's something about that that's so powerful to me. I love also having accountability partners and mentors, because they kind of put an and they put a fire under you, and they also bring in other life experiences, lived experiences, and other resources and knowledge. I think there's a genius in all of us, and I think that when you have someone else, that comes along, they're able to help, cultivate the genius in you and to cultivate that grit in you. And then, of course, knowing your why. Why are you doing what you're doing? Why are you passionate? What's the story behind why you got on this journey? Even if it was to just start because you just wanted a side hustle or you just wanted whatever, now it's evolved. So now what is your why? Your why can evolve over time. It can tell a story. There's different reasons as to why we're in different scopes of life and different scopes of work. There's different reasons for it. So it's imperative that you keep that why alive and that you understand that why at all times. Okay. So with that said, thanks for letting me share that with you. I now want to go to looking at some things that I found online, just about what is grit, how to develop it without burnout, how to win with grit, how to be grittier. So here, this is Dr. Damian Vaughn. She wrote this. This says, "What is grit? 5 ways to develop grit without burnout." So she's talking about the queen, Dr. Duckworth of grit. And it says that she defines grit as applying focused attention, resilience, perseverance, and dedication to achieving specific long-term goals. Okay. She says that, she studied grit for years. It's a single trait in her complex that accounts for wavering nature, which accounts for success. Okay. And even more important than natural talent, ability, and intelligence. So without this, so it says, what is grit? It's a combination of the passion and perseverance in an effort to achieve a long-term goal. Without passion, perseverance leads to burnout. And without perseverance, we simply give up. I think that's very interesting because, it's like you're like spinning your wheels, right? Because, you got all this passion, but what for? Where are you going? So grit gives people a mental toughness that enables them to persist and even succeed in the face of adversity. And sometimes people go through adverse situations that are more along the lines of just hardships and injustices. And sometimes it's not fair. But if they have a gritty mindset, they will be able to overcome. I will say, though, a fine line with that is you have to understand whenever there's an opportunity and you can actually make progress versus a just flat no, shut door. It's closed, it's cold, and you're just going to be spinning your wheels, leading to burnout, not because you're not gritty, but because you're in an unjust situation. And so I would say that to those that are like, oh, well, can you have grit in the face of maybe different injustices? Can you have grit, in the face of closed doors? I would say love yourself enough to know whenever there might be an opportunity and when it's just a flat no. I don't think it's wise to fight over and to be gritty over something. Like, for instance, if somebody didn't want your student in their class because of something beyond their control, the way they look, the way they sound, the way they dress, whatever. I don't know. But if there's like an unspoken barrier that is a part of injustice, grit can't help all of that. And as big of a fan as I am to grit, different things like racial injustice, gender, sexisms and things like that. Those things, you cannot eradicate those with grit. And people that are, students that are going through different things like that, they just simply have to find a place where they can play, find a place where they are accepted. And that means, sometimes you're not going to get, that first opportunity or that best thing with the shining lights on it that you thought was so great that you wanted. But you have all of these injustices and all these barriers that you're going to have to learn how to just walk away and reserve your grit to actually be in a place and among people who do receive you, who do celebrate you, who do want you there. And I speak as a woman of diverse background, that It's not always going to be easy and it's not always going to be fair, but that's when you learn to have enough self-care to recognize whenever, yeah, I can play here, I am accepted, I can do well, versus I'm just spinning my wheels and I need to walk away. And so I say that because they're talking about adversity, and I wanted to make sure people understood adversity is different from injustice, because adversity means it's just a hard situation, but you can bounce back, you can be resilient, you can get through it, and you can win. Injustice is not always. Okay? And so sometimes when an injustice is there, you can lose your life. You can lose your everything. So it's imperative that we understand the difference whenever you're talking about grit in adversity and grit in the face of injustice, which unfortunately people are going through. But let's keep moving forward. It says, it's not that these individuals experience fewer setbacks or less hardship. It's that they're adaptive and resilient. They don't give up when faced with challenges. In short, grit is the secret of achieving any long-term goal. And the prime difference between those who have grit and those who don't is their mindset. People with more grit, yes, you can have different grit levels, have a growth mindset that allows them to see obstacles and challenges and approach them with a positive attitude. So, how do you measure grit? So, she has a grit scale, and it talks about different things here. I am diligent, I never give up, or I have overcome setbacks to conquer an important challenge. I think that's pretty neat. And it says, well, then why does grit matter? So, and I also have a measurement, I forgot. On my website, I have a grit assessment as well, that measures grit levels. And it's actually based off of a framework that I did at the wonderful University of Florida, where we measure grit with growth mindset, resilience, self-efficacy, and time management. You can check that out. Okay, so why does grit matter? So grit matters because it bridges the gap between raw talent and potential and achieving success. Interesting. Grit makes you take a risk. It makes you vulnerable in giving someone a chance. It makes you vulnerable in giving yourself a chance, in opening up something new, starting a business, writing a book, whatever. And I think that's why people hold back on it, right? And they have some fears and qualms because that risk factor. There's a risk factor with grit, right? There's a risk because you can even say, like, for instance, you're working out. You could say, I want to work out for an hour today. But you might have a fear of, well, what if, I don't know, what if I spring a muscle or do, I don't know. But it's like once you finally face your fears and you take that step forward and you have faith and courage, then you can be gritty and actually exceed your expectations. Like, I'm waiting to get gritty enough to run a marathon one day. I'll stick with 5Ks for now. But it's one of those things of, are you willing to take a risk and give it your best shot, and then let the cookies crumble where they may, And that's what the Gators did. They took a risk. They were gritty. They played with all their heart, not knowing whether or not they're going to win or not, and they came out on top. Go Gators. Now, let's get back to this. She was a doctoral student at the University of Pennsylvania at the time, studied students from West Point, right, in the National Spelling Bee, and she found that grit was the ultimate predictor of their success. Okay, so this is pretty powerful too. In her book, our potential is one thing, but what we do with it is quite another. Okay. Oh. So what are 5 characteristics of grit? Perseverance, resilience, courage, passion, and conscientiousness are your 5 characteristics of grit. Okay, so they talk about it here. Perseverance. So it says whether it's finding work-life balance, learning a new technical skill, or transitioning into a leadership role, perseverance is crucial to keep growing. Without it, you're likely to give up prematurely. I hate that when somebody is working on something and then they stop halfway. It's like, what are you doing, right? Okay, resilience. It helps you to bounce back whenever you fail or face challenges that seem too tough to overcome. So developing resilience can help you better manage stress to recover more quickly from your setbacks. So true grit is supported by resilience. Courage. I like that. And this is kind of what I was just talking about, right? Having the courage to fail is closely tied to being gritty. Right. Fear of failure can halt progress before you even get close to it. Exactly. Right. Grittier people will take on initiatives that scare them despite their fears. Passion. Okay. Taking time to reflect and understand what is important to you and why it is an important step in creating goals for the long term and short term. Grit then comes from being driven by this passion rooted in your values. Conscientiousness. All right. So this is thought of as working tirelessly to do a good job, following the rules, and doing what's right. However, when it relates to grit, the value actually comes from planning and following through on any commitments, staying motivated to tackle hard things because they're necessary, right? So how then do you develop grit? Find your passion, practice, contribute to a greater purpose. Give yourself time. I love that. You know, so many times we feel like to be gritty, you have to like Bugs Bunny, like just brrr, like just going, or Energizer Bunny, sorry. Like you feel like you have to just go, 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 go. And it's not necessarily doing that in a way that is extreme and unhealthy. Like, so if you're trying to lose weight, you don't want to go on an 18-day fast with no water or with no food, and then like you can barely function from day to day because you're like, I have to be gritty. I've got to lose this weight. And you're working out 3 hours a day or what? Like, that's wild. That's too much. And I'm probably somebody's out there doing that. I hope not. But you know, that's a lot. That's a lot. Know how to push yourself, but know your limits. You have to have life balance. You got to know how to push yourself with grit, but have limits to balance it so that it doesn't turn into burnout. You don't do anything to harm yourself, right? Even mentally. Reading so many books, doing so many things, like learning how to say no, learning how to balance, so that you don't burn out and you don't lose it. It becomes obsession. Grit is what pushes great performers, right, to reach the edge of their ability. It's what helps them to show up and persevere despite incredible odds. But grit can quickly become an obsession. Yes. So while grit brings us to our edge, it's flow that continually pushes the edge out, keeps sustainable performers from falling off into the abyss. I like that. I love it. This is awesome. Okay, balancing grit with flow. So, grit is the price of admission at elite levels of performance. Okay, so you have to raise the bar and maintain peak performance, right? And so then once you do that, then it comes out with that term, greatest of all time, because you did not stop. You were gritty. Okay, you didn't fall off the abyss. So research shows that the experience of flow itself becomes a goal in itself. So now I'll end with this. How do you get into a flow state, right? I think of Serena Williams when I think of that, right? So it says here, Warren Buffett has always said the measure of success is whether people close to you are happy and love you. Oh my word. Oh my gosh. It's also nice, oh my gosh, to feel you made a difference. Inventing something or raising kids or helping people in need. Oh my gosh, y'all. That is a mouthful. People close to you are happy and that they love you. Powerful. Oh my gosh, that's like an epiphany to me. So to answer this, then you have to go back to Robert J. Valleran's passion research. He says his research was linked to flow, ability, and passion. Individuals who express flow by harmonious passion have a more harmonious integration. So basically flow that keeps them from descending into a state of obsession and burnout. Gritty people that derive such an excessive amount from their self-esteem from their work that they aren't able to turn it off. Listen, you workaholics, to everybody that cannot turn off work. Listen, it says gritty people that derive such an excessive amount of their self-esteem from their work that they are unable to turn it off when they should are likely suffering from the opposite of harmonious passion. It's obsessive passion. Their minds are ruminating on work issues, even though they're in the presence of significant others outside of the office. With this lack of control, obsessive passion has been linked to lower flow experiences. Because then over time, these individuals' performance becomes less and less sustainable, and they become less happy. Individuals with a harmonious passion from their work identity with their work and become deeply engaged with it, but not to the extent that they neglect the other aspects of their life. On the flip side, individuals maintain harmonious passion, but are also gritty. They have a more complex sense of self. I love that. So remember, grit matters, but so does flow. I like that. Remember, if grit has gotten you far in life, it can and will become a vice at some point in your career. So continue to push yourself without overextending and work on developing skills that you need for that state of passion. I'm going to stop reading there. That was pretty powerful, especially at the end there when they were talking about the workaholics. And listen, I used to be guilty of that big time, not knowing how to turn it off, because then when you walk away, you realize that you were in some type of illusion. You thought that who you are was the job. Guys, we are so much bigger than a job. We are so much bigger than the work that we're defined by. We're people. We are human. Although those things are just substances and temporary things. Yes, noble. Yes, honorable. Yeah, all that. Great. Yeah, you can pat yourself in the back. You've done some great things. Awesome. But you are bigger than that. You have a purpose. You're bigger than just a job or just a 9-to-5, just to what you do every day. So don't allow yourself to get so lost in that you put off the people that love you, the people that want to have a coffee with you, the people that want to go out and eat with you and just hang out. I thought that was pretty beautiful. So with that said, I want to play some little clips that I found, some little, there was a championship here that they won, and they're talking about speed and grit.
But that's how we won the cups, is that, and I understand it, games change. It's more scoring, more power play, PK, but you also need that grit.
Yeah.
And at least you need guys that can take it for you, so they can, they're young guys and the bigger, the big veterans, and they don't get hurt, so I think that's kind of the aspect of it. We got speed, but that's how we won the cup.
I thought that was pretty neat. So I like his mindset, because he realized he was in it not just for himself, but for the team. And they were talking about them winning the, cups and all that stuff. So, all right, let's look at one more. Entrepreneur.
They wanted to just, be lazy, I guess, and just enjoy college, which is awesome. But I actually wanted to enjoy college and make money. So I had this, great side hustle business where I'd go around and, meet people and buy their phones. And just big fact that I was willing to put the time in to learn that, and then learn the customer service side, both in person and online, helped me develop the grit to get through some of those situations later. And, also it's just being able to have the right people around you to make sure that they can support you so you can focus and have the grit to push through. If you don't have that support system from your family, your partner and stuff like that, sometimes it'll be harder to, kind of push forward.
I think that is fabulous what he said, and well done to him on what he's doing. And it makes me think of James Brown, God bless the dead, where if you've watched one of his movies, like of his life, there was a scene, and I watched it because I was on a plane. And so anyways, there was a scene in his life where everybody left him on his band, and they're like, we're done with you, bro. Like, I think they were called like the BJs or the JBs or something. I don't know. And it was his first band, and they had some albums out, or some singles, whatever. They left and they said, "We're done. We don't want to do this anymore. We're done with you. We don't support you anymore." And James in the movie, he says, "Okay." And he was like heartbroken at first, but then he says, wait a second. And he started like calling and saying, "Wait, what about that one guy? Call that guy. What about that one guy? Call them. Call them." Like, and he literally made a whole nother team, a whole nother band, because the first band was done with them. They didn't appreciate him. They weren't grateful anymore. They were done. So he among himself said, "I don't have to take your rejection as the final answer for my life. I can always create a table and start over." And so he did that through grit. And I think we can learn from James as well in that. I think James Brown is was a wonderful musician. And like they said, he was the hardest working man in show business, and even talks about grit in one of his songs. So anyways, with that said, guys, thanks so much for joining me today on the Let's Get Gritty podcast with Dr. India White. I'm super excited about some of the things going on regarding some of the events that we'll have coming up. You've got NCTM and FCTM and the joint conferences and all these. I wish all of you guys safe travels with all of this, and I hope to see all of you there. I hope, everything goes well, traveling mercies. Everything goes well with your friends and family. Also, I would invite you again to follow me on Facebook, Miss India White. LinkedIn is the India White. Twitter is Indie Speak and Teach. Instagram is Indie238. YouTube is India White 123, and TikTok's Dr. India White. Threads is Indie238, and Blue Sky is Dr. India White. Follow me on the website, www.india-white.com, for books, blogs, or to reach out to schedule me for an event. I would love to join you guys. I know graduations are coming up. You might need a speaker. I'd be honored. Also, I do have online tutoring going on with the Grit Academy. I also have the Grit Mini Workshop. And of course, I'm not going to stop reminding you guys of your Grit calendars. So with that said, guys, stay gritty. Make sure you are keeping great resilience and time. You've got this. Continue to win through grit. The taking is for you. So thanks again for joining me. Until next time, stay gritty. See ya.